Hello fellow travelers! In this video I'll show you the deck that can handle almost any PvE TCG battle and that I've personally been using for a very long time by now. Here's the deck list, and it has several key points that make it so good. The setup for this deck is literally just one card. Moreover, it works even if you don't get it or if you have absolutely awful dice rolls. It'll just take an additional round or two. This deck has very consistent and powerful opener, no matter what you are up against, with just one minor adjustment you can make in specific challenges, but more on that later. And finally, the gameplay is extremely simple and very forgiving. It doesn't matter if you don't make optimal play, lose a character or don't get specific card. This deck has lots of independent tools that you can use, or sacrifice for dices depending on what you need at the moment. Now let's take a look at the deck to understand the main idea before I throw the algorithm at you. As I mentioned before, there is only one key card that you really want to get as soon as possible. The core of this deck consists of just very cheap dice cheats, damage cheats, and card draw to get to those. The rest of the deck is a couple of support cards and what I'd call a tech part, which is related to weapons because, once again, aside from damage, it gives us dice cheats and card draw. This part is really good only if you manage to save up several cards, so don't be shy to use those for elemental tuning for immediate effect instead. Our ideal opener with this deck is Mona's skill into Bennett's skill, which is 3 Hydro plus 3 Pyro dices and 1 dice to switch characters. So aside from Bennett's talent card, we are looking for something cheap to spend that last dice. Any card draw effect or an artifact would suffice. Here's a pretty much ideal opening. The main reason why we use Mona here is the fact that she applies Hydro twice, and she also has fast switch passive. Since you always start first against AI, this is a guaranteed 6 damage opener, which can be countered only by switching characters as the very first action, and 99% of the time bots won't do that. Moreover, most of the time you will end your turn first as well, which gives you another 6 damage combo for turn 2 if you get good dice rolls. Your main priority on turn 2 is to use Bennett's burst, with or without talent. So if you don't get enough pyro dices, just use normal attack. It's totally fine because we'll just use this Hydro status to boost our damage later. Since we use any attack and burst, we need 7 dices in total, so you can play any cheap card this turn as well. Constantly counting your dices is very helpful in TCG regardless of what deck you play, but with this one it's pretty much the same every time. As I said before, weapon tech part of this deck is our primary candidates for elemental tuning if you lack proper dices, so I use those to play the burst. Normally after that you want to stay with Bennett and keep rolling for pyro dices exclusively to deal damage and reuse his burst until the very end. But in this game my Bennett actually dies, which is still not a problem. Klee in this lineup serves as a plan B, where B stands exactly for Bennett dies. She fits perfectly into this deck theme, not just for pyro synergy, but also because she is able to increase damage and reduce cost of her charged attacks with her skill. However, since my opponent ended their turn with healthy Ganyu with no element, it's a good time to apply more Hydro with Mona first for a lot of additional damage. So that's when we use familiar combo, Mona's skill and fast switch. Klee's normal attacks are not as powerful as skill, but under Bennett's buff we deal much more damage, and with the use of resonance buff we can kill Ganyu even through her shield. I also reduced the cost of her attack to play Gambler's Earrings, fancy plays that could allow me to play something else, or in this case at least switch to Mona if need be, but it's not a big deal if you miss this kind of interactions. Now our Klee is ready to murder everyone no matter what opponent is going to do, so we just win. Again, this time we actually lost Bennett. Unfortunate, but not the end of the world. Now let's take a look at another game where things went differently. Here we have a Dendro Monolith. Remember what I said about few exceptions for the opening? Dendro Monolith doesn't matter, so we play as usual, but if it was Hydro or Cryo one, we would no longer need to start with Mona and could start with Bennett right away. But that would be the only change. In this game we get neither great opening hand nor dice rolls. If you get unlucky with dices, give priority to Mona's skill, because most of the time you'll be able to use that Hydro anyway, just a bit later, no big deal. Our opponent decides to spend the entire turn to switch characters this time. Do we care? Not really. Since we've got Paimon card in the opening hand, we are able to cheat out Bennett's skill and deal a lot of extra damage, so we do exactly that. I decided to equip Gambler's Earrings, but Witch's Hat would be fine as well. Remember that even though it costs 2 dices, it saves 1 pyro dice right away, so in total it's just 1 extra dice you need to spend. Turn 2. Ideally we need 7 pyro dices, but 5 is not bad. Thank you, J-Chamber. Okay, never mind, our opponent didn't switch with 2 HP left. We take those 2 extra dices. Anyways, we didn't find Bennett's talent card, but it's fine. We'll use the burst as is then. And 1 more skill before we finish our turn. For the next turn, our Bennett is still alive, so we keep looking for pyro dices. There is no way for me to kill Mona right now, so let's try to use 3 skills in a turn using food. In hindsight, using normal attack was not the best play at the moment because with double skill I could kill Mona this turn, but potentially it was exactly what saved my Bennett this round. Leave a comment if you can see why. Anyway, the game is pretty much over at this point, so we just keep using what we can to deal more damage and finish it. Now, I did say that it works not just for duels but for PvE challenges in general, so let's take a look at a couple of different ones. The strategy still stays the same. We are looking for Bennett's talent card or at least card draw in the opening hand. We start with Mona, use her skill, completely ignore anything our opponent is doing, switch to Bennett, use his skill, and our turn. Turn 2. 1 attack and Bennett's burst. Just keep counting your dice to make sure that you have enough to use burst. We didn't get the talent card, but who cares, right? Turn 3. Bennett is still alive, so we keep using his attacks. Not the best dice rolls, but who cares, normal attacks it is. We got overloaded and forced to switch to Klee. Should we care now? Nope, we'll just play with Klee. Got overloaded again. Perfect, just what we wanted against 2 opponents with Pyro. Now there are at least 3 ways to end the match this round. Here's one of them. Would it go any different if you didn't spot any of them? I don't think so. Okay, another kind of challenge. Here we have an enemy we can kill with Bennett right away, so we skip Mona this time. Nothing else changes. Since we got a lot of extra dices from kills, we might as well use the burst right away. And of course we draw a talent card right after that. Thank you, game. Turn 2, we used Bennett's burst and he is still alive. Cool, keep dealing damage with Bennett. Just do what you can with dices and cards you're given. That's the main goal. Since our cards are very cheap and none of them are essential, there is always something you can do. And that's exactly what makes this deck so powerful and consistent. Finally, there are weekly boss challenges occasionally, but I didn't have any when I've been recording all of that. So I did a tavern version of Terror's Room and I won both normal and serious ones. Every time. I've been using this deck for PvE since TCG release, changing just a couple of cards with updates, and it worked nicely all this time. But don't trust me, link to the deck page is in the description, so try it out yourself. After all, I finished all initial TCG content with just a starting deck to make this fancy story. Check it out too, don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.